Hi there, my name's Ian Hawkins. Welcome to Navigating New Regulations and Seeking Funding in the Care Sector. I'm delighted to be joined by three experts talking about this topic. Before I introduce them, let's do some housekeeping straight away.'re find us we're not audible or not visible, you can put a note in the Q&A box and we will make sure that we're back online ASAP. The Q&A box is also a great place to ask us your questions. So if there's anything that you want to know, we have three fantastic, knowledgeable people here. Please do lean on their expertise in the next hour or so. Let me just introduce those three people for you. First of all, we have Tony Theroux, who's the director and founder of Fulcrum Care. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Ian. Great to be here.
And great to have you as well. And we have the business manager for Fulcrum, Tina Stebbings. Tina, thanks for joining us.
Hello, good to meet you all. Thank you very much.
And of course, the amazing Stuart Pavlicek from Swoop Funding. Stuart, how are things going with you?
Yeah, very well. Afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's keeping well, and thanks for hosting, Ian.
It's an absolute pleasure. Look, the title of this webinar says that there is change on the way in relation to the regulatory requirements placed upon care operators by the CQC. So, Tony, Tina, can you give us a brief summary of what is changing at the CQC and why is it all changing?
Yeah, I can start with that. Currently, as I'm sure most people are aware, there are two assessment frameworks. One is for the health providers and one for adult social care providers. So the idea here is to move to a single assessment framework, and this will cover all registered providers. It'll also cover the local authority and integrated care systems. We are going to be keeping the 5 key questions, the 5 Chloes. A lot of it won't change. This was supposed to be happening the 1st of January this year. It's now been delayed. And what's going to happen in spring? CQC are going to be checking the technology and testing it with providers. In the summer, they're going to launch the new online portal, and providers will start to submit their notifications through that new portal. And then by the end of 2023, CQC will start to carry out their assessments using the new assessment framework. And this will be powered by the integrated assessment teams and the new technology. I think it's the new technology that has delayed everything, because in order to do this effectively, they've got to have the technology in place for the providers to be using. So the ongoing assessment of care services will be a more fluid way. So instead of having, you're a good care home, you have your inspection, you get good again, you don't see CQC then for another 2 to 3 years. In the meantime, all sorts of things can happen, but unless CQC get noise coming out of your service, they're not going to be bothering you again. The way going forward, there'll be much more focus on data and intelligence. They will continue to inspect in person, but on a basis of the risk that they've collected the intelligence to assume a risk for each provider. They'll be collecting evidence and assigning scores to evidence categories. It looks like quite a complicated way of giving you your rating, but my own personal feeling is it will work. The aim is to update ratings more frequently. Now, in an ideal world, the way this should work is there's lots of constant data coming in from lots of different areas, and each care home will be able to have a fluid rating. So you're never going to be able to sit on your good for 3 years again. And likewise, if you get inadequate, you should be able to move yourself out of it quite quickly if you've got if you've got the data, the intelligence going in. So how are they going to collect the evidence? They're going to collect it from people's experience. So when I say people, that's looking at information from staff and leaders and partners. They will be doing some observations. They'll be looking at policies, processes and procedures and outcomes that people are getting. So it is going to be a lot more fluid. And I think from the bank's point of view, it's going to be better in a way, because when you see a CQC rating now, we know we do a lot of audits on care homes that are about to have their their inspection after not being inspected for 3 years, and we can see quite clearly that a lot of them are not good anymore. So from the bank's point of view, they're going to have a much better detailed, up-to-date idea of where each care home sits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tony, can I? Thanks for that, Tina. Tony, can I just ask you, as the founder of this company, so do you feel that it's a good thing? You know, if you, like Tina says, if you're adequate, you can raise your game, but also from the person who's being cared for, their point of view, they know that they're not going to be hiding behind their good rating when perhaps the standards are slipping.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So I think certainly it's, I mean, changes in regulation in the past have always been geared towards providing assurance to users of those services, whether it be the residents themselves or their families. And I think this is certainly, on one hand, there is a bit of thinking that this is, the same the same under a different wrapper, and there is some truth in that. But at the same time, it also creates greater consciousness of quality amongst care providers and staff who work in those services. So I think that goes a long way, and certainly we've seen this in the longer term. We've seen this always improve the quality of service delivered. So hence also the confidence in such services. Care providers are always under the spotlight with the media, especially because it's the negatives that get highlighted, and we are constantly, as a consultancy, trying to share the positives as much as possible out there. However, this change of approach, I think, keeps everyone on their toes. So I think it's certainly a good thing in that sense.
Excellent. Stuart, let's come to you. So how are banks and lenders currently assessing regulatory performance?
It depends on the lender, is the honest answer. As things stand, your mainstream banks that provide support to the healthcare sector would typically look towards that green, amber, red traffic light system that the CQC currently have. And they ideally want an operator to have a good status or a good rating across the board. But that's your mainstream traditional banks. They don't necessarily take the time to understand the detail because, as I'm sure Tony and Tina can confirm, you do see some good quality care homes where they are marked down as requires improvement, and it's more down to, it's not due to the quality of care, it's usually due to record keeping or something just hasn't been logged properly. So adopting that approach where you're purely driven by that traffic light system, personally, it doesn't sit well with me because it's not focusing on the actual quality of the business and the operation and the care that it provides. That being said, there is a broader alternative finance market, or tier 2 lenders, who are a lot more flexible in their approach, in that, yes, in a perfect world, they would love to see that care homes are rated as good across the board, but they also operate with a degree of realism that not every day is a perfect day in a business. And I understand that a CQC inspection is a snapshot on that day or days that CQC inspector is in the business. Somebody could be off sick, somebody could be having a bad day, whatever it is could impact the overall rating. But they're happier to dig into the detail a little bit more and understand actually what's driving that, and is it fixable? And if it's a good operator that's able to fix it, then there are lending options where they will consider that more broad approach to reviewing the CQC report and work with the client still to provide funding and support them to turn it around.
And what about the impact of the plan changes? How is that going to change decision making on commercial finance?
I think it should be something which is really, really going to have a positive impact on the market. As Tina highlighted, there's going to be a lot more fluidity to this now, which if you look historically, care operators or even first-time buyers in the care sector looking to raise finance, they were always sort of shoehorned into looking for a minimum good rating across the board. Now, notwithstanding that there are options that will consider homes that requires improvement for the right operator, the fluidity in the new regime will actually enable people, buyers and sellers, to essentially work together. If there are issues there, you can fix them, and CQC will be updated quicker, which should enable transactions to happen much quicker. And lenders get more comfortable with propositions as well. For example, even if a care home has a good rating across the board, there was one that we looked at this week or back end of last week. The last inspection was 4 years ago. 4 years ago. So much can happen in that period of time to that business, which means that report, you can't rely on it. It's of no use whatsoever. Lenders in that instance are asking for mock inspections. So operators should really still have a sort of finger on the pulse and mock inspections, but this new regime will actually be a benefit where you almost get real-time live information to the pulse check on the regulatory performance of the business. So it should be a win-win all round.
Well, on that note, let's go back to Tony and Tina. You've got a business, hasn't been inspected for 4 years because it's last got a good rating in the last inspection. So what should you be focusing on as an operator?
Yeah, well, going back to the basics, absolutely going back to the basics, going through each key line of inquiry, going through each element of each key line of inquiry, and ticking everything off to check it's all been done. I think what we've all found is since COVID, some of the real basic stuff's missing when we go and do mock CQC inspections that before COVID would never have happened. And I think that it is really, really going back to basics and looking at those key lines of inquiry that they're inspecting on. I think one of the things that, before COVID, for example, we never ever walked in a care home and met anybody that hadn't got a DBS. Things were relaxed during COVID, and we've seen that. There's really basic things that are easy fixes, but need addressing. And I think with care home mock CQC inspections, it's always the same. It's always care planning, medication, and staffing. If we get those three things nailed, everything else seems to fall into place around it. So yeah, it is just going right back to the basics of what you should be doing. Have a list of your CLOEs and actually audit against your CLOEs. It's all right having lots of audits for internal audits for lots of things, but go back to that basic. What are CQC looking for?
Okay. Stuart, on your side, how do historic inspections impact the lending market? Because none of this can really move if you don't have the funds to do it, can we?
No, and it kind of will be a bit of repetition here with my last answer. So those more traditional lenders, your high street banks, are very much focused on that good across the board. That is essentially what drives their decision as to whether they support somebody buying or refinancing a care home or not. Moving forward, this fluidity should see lenders actually rolling up their sleeves a little bit more and doing a deep dive essentially on the regulatory performance of the business, rather than just taking the information at face value. That in itself should improve quality, but it should also it should aid the decision-making process. Either, yes, this is definitely one, or reaffirm, yes, this is definitely a business or an operator we wish to support. Or secondly, no, the risks, for us as a lender, the risks are too high in view of what this report is showing us. But then where there are scenarios where the risks are too high, you're able to take immediate action. You can get the likes of Fulcrum involved to provide that support, and where something needs to be improved or tweaked, you can do that a lot quicker, and you'll see the upside of that a lot quicker as well. And again, that'll provide lenders comfort that actually we're dealing with serious people who don't bury their head in the sand when an issue arises. They attack it head on, and then they provide a solution to fix it. And that in itself, it's more character around what a lender's when a lender's supporting an operator.
Okay, lovely. Tony, let's come to you. So when a business is rated as inadequate or requires improvements, and you're called in to provide external support, what are the similarities you've seen between those businesses, and how can operators protect themselves against challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a fantastic question, Ian. Thank you. So we've seen businesses which have been, you referred to businesses which have been inspected 4 years ago and have been rated good. We have come across such businesses becoming complacent simply because of someone's had a good or an outstanding. They become complacent. So we've seen them dropping fairly quickly to requires improvement or inadequate, and that's the kind of situation that most of the time we get called into. Some of the common characteristics there are a certain level of complacency that has set in, and I think COVID hasn't helped because, you know, when the inspectors or the local authorities took a back seat, there were some bad practices coming in. So there was a quick sweep by the inspection authorities, the inspectors rather, and the local authorities, which then helped to identify homes which had gone down in terms of practice, in terms of compliance, and hence ratings have been downgraded. But we've also then seen some haven't passed through that net, or it's still going through that re-inspection, which is taking time. So some of the common characteristics again are lack of openness. I know CQC beats the drum about closed culture, and they're not far off from that. So it's a lack of openness, a lack of willingness to have continuous improvement in terms of what they do. So I know Tina highlight, and this then comes down to a leadership issue. And leadership traditionally, always in the past, has been where the providers would say, "Oh, my manager wasn't good." But often, I mean, CQC's regulations, in Regulation 17 in particular, look at good governance as well. So good governance is not just about the home manager, it's about the provider as well. And it just goes hand in hand. And often we found, or we find now, providers have learned from those mistakes, learned from others' mistakes, and have become more open. We've had to you know, have a change in reorient thinking and get people to be more open about, you know, feedback, improve continuously. So I know Tina touched upon medication, staffing, and care planning. There's also that leadership aspect, something softer, that continuous improvement, and also the competence building, the training, because you are not sitting still. There's always something new to learn from you know, somebody else or otherwise. So I think the learning organizations have done really well and have evolved and really quickly as well. And that's gone a long way in terms of making changes. So if a home in one of the groups has had an issue, then that gets cascaded to the rest of the group, and that gets picked up. So we've seen some groups picking up on those learnings, get those lessons learned cascaded. Again, something that CQC enshrines in the safe aspect, or you know, there's a lessons learned aspect of that. So all that goes a long way in creating better services. So we've seen services go from 5 inadequates to 5 goods. It's not unusual at all. So it's not just the requires improvement points that have gone to goods. We've seen a number of services that we have worked with, which have just changed their thinking. And then having that compliance level, having that change in compliance has always resulted in better commercial outputs, better commercial performance. So we've seen the businesses which have been told, sorry, you know, even if you get to good, we're not going to place clients with you. They've had, you know, fantastic results where they've been given block contracts, they've been given much higher fee levels, and then also be able to attract a stable workforce. So it is possible, and it's just not getting into a certain comfort zone, the biggest danger. And also, I think what really works is collaborating with a number of stakeholders, whether it's the staff, residents, families, and the authorities, the commissioners, for example, and trying to integrate as much as possible into the community, the local community that you're part of. So that's been the success factors for homes that have learned fairly quickly and turned themselves around fairly quickly.
Can I jump in at that point as well? Because that mirrors a couple of points one point that I just said around character. Lenders buy into character of the operator, of who they are, how do they behave in certain circumstances, what are their drives and aims. But on the flip side as well, we do deal with a lot of first-time buyers in the care sector. And one question that we are often asked by a first-time buyer is, you know, what's the key to success, basically? And I've been telling operators or first-time entrants in this sector, and I know our team have as well, is that if you focus on the basics, so kind of picking up what Tina and Tony have said there, is execute the basics well, have care at as the focus of everything that you do, and quality of care as the focus of everything that you do, your P&L performance will take care of itself. And lenders do understand that. They absolutely understand that. So it's about how do you demonstrate that quality to lenders when you are talking to them to access finance. But I just thought that was a nice point to sort of bring all that together there.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. I mean, that does take us on quite nicely to this idea that most high street banks have actually migrated towards larger purpose-built facilities. Is this where the best quality care can be found, or do smaller care homes still have their place in the market?
I love this question, and it's a debate that we have regularly with banks. I think a lot of the banks' desire to move to larger purpose-built units is with two key drivers really for that. The first one is debt value. So, you know, if they were looking at a smaller, you know, let's say a 20-bed converted care home, they could be looking at a debt value of £500,000 to £1 million secured against that asset. Whereas if they're lending on a 50, 60-bed purpose-built care home, you're probably a multi-million-pound in terms of debt quantum as to, and I think that's driving some of the behaviour from lenders, certainly at the top end of the market. And the second reason why I think there's a focus on this is the demographic of the service user. Now, if you consider the vast majority of residents in care homes at the moment, and I'm talking elderly and nursing care, the vast majority of those residents and service users will have seen a World War II, probably grew up in a 2 up, 2 down, were lucky to experience 1 or 2 family holidays as they were growing up. If you compare that to the next generation service user, you know, people that are probably in their 50s and 60s right now, they would have had a completely different experience. The baby boom generation, you know, it's not unusual for them to have 1 or 2 luxury holidays a year. You know, we're talking a generation where they've probably been used to a cruise every couple of years or something like that. So the expectation in what a service user would want out of a facility is going to be completely different across those 2 groups of people. And I think that's part of the reason as well, which is what's driving it. But to answer the question, is better quality care found in these bigger purpose-built units? Absolutely not. Care is centered around the individual, and each operator and an employee of a care home, they all have a role to play in the quality of care that they provide to a resident. Yes, these bigger purpose-built units have lots more facilities. They may have a sort of more friendly environment, if you like, but that's in the fabric and the bricks and mortar of the building, not in the people actually providing the care. I've seen hundreds of care homes throughout my career and my years of funding them, and you know, some of the smaller converted units are proper homely settings where outstanding care is absolutely provided. So to pigeonhole them based on the environment is just a no-go for me. In addition to that, one area where there will be challenges, probably from a regulatory perspective, is driven around the environment. So we've seen over the last couple of years in particular, and this has partly been driven as a result of COVID, is what can operators do to make their environment as infection-proof as possible, but also making sure that what facilities they do have, there are going to be limitations in older converted stock just because of the very nature of the layout of the buildings, but have operators taken all the steps that they can to make it as good as it can be? Good operators do, and they come out positively on the other side of CQC after those sorts of inspections. But yeah, to come back to the question, there's good quality care across the UK in all sorts of assets. It doesn't need to be a 50-bed plus unit for them to provide good quality care. Tony, Tina, I'm keen to get your take on that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a good answer,
Absolutely.
but I'd like to hear from Tina. I've not heard from her for a while. What's your take, Tina?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've only got to look at the evidence of outstanding care homes. There's a complete mix of all types of care homes that achieve outstanding. And I think it is very much about working again right back to basics, working with your residents, making sure you're delivering what the residents want. Make sure that the residents that are going into your care home are actually choosing the right care home for them. Not everybody wants a hotel-like care home. Some people want to live in a small home. The one thing, though, that I think between all of those, it's not about the facility. It is about the care. It's about that care that's delivered. The focus around that registered manager. I can't tell you how important that registered manager role is. Having that central person that drives what goes on in that care home. A very sometimes undervalued commodity. If you the right registered manager can do anything with any environment. The one thing I think possibly is en suites. If I was, and I'm not, if I was funding care, I would be very closely looking at en suites, because I think the future of sharing toilets is not, it's not there. And I'm in my 50s to 60s, and I'm not going to be sharing. So yeah, I think it is very much about the manager, the team, the people, the residents, just even down to choosing the right residents to come into your care home that fit with your environment.
Awesome, thank you. Let's broaden this out a little bit, because it's sort of the flip side of the coin, isn't it? Because we know there's a shortage of stock, so there's lots of smaller operators that are forced to consider, buying up all these struggling homes. What should they be thinking about, and how good is it to get a home from, require improvement up to a good standard? Tina, you're nodding at me, so I'm going to go straight to you.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. Okay, I think to get a home from inadequate to outstanding is a massive achievement, and I won't, the stuff the work that we've put in to make that happen is tough. We always say we can turn any care home around with a fantastic registered manager in place, and often, you could argue that manager failed. They got an inadequate. They need to be gone. They might just need a little bit of hand-holding support and to understand. And we very often do that. We'll go in, we'll support that manager. We find it a struggle to turn a home around without a registered manager or senior team in place. That's where, because we can do it, we can put interim managers in, we can put all sorts of people in, but without that core in the home to start with, we can't actually turn that around as easily. I won't say we can't turn it around as easily.
I was just going to jump in at this point.
Yeah, I thought you were.
So we've had a number of situations where an asset has been acquired by a new provider, for example, who has purchased a care home which is inadequate or requires improvement. And particularly when a new provider is involved, we find that it's possible to take it, make it improve the rating, and often to good is, from our experience, quite relatively quickly. So it's taken anything from 3 to 6 months, and the timeline is actually dictated by when CQC is willing to come back next, more than how much time we need to fix it, shall we say. So we've had, I think I was referring to earlier on, homes with 5 inadequates or inadequates going to good. Typically, we've seen them happen within 3 to 6 months. And I know Tina touched upon having a registered manager. Even having a manager figure of some sort has helped to take it forward. So I think the way we look at it is the management figure would look at the day-to-day side of things. We look at the improvement work. We support them with the improvement work. We get the team rallied around to work towards it. So it's the staff, it's even the residents, relatives, everyone's oriented, all the stakeholders are oriented in that direction of travel, which has then helped to, that always helps. And rather than the typical approach or the traditional approach has been, oh, here's the action plan, now let's work towards it and review it every week or every couple of weeks. Whereas we've actually got everyone else around oriented in that direction. And that has gone a long way. It has made the turnarounds a lot quicker, a lot easier, a lot less painful, shall we say. So there was an instance, for example, Ian, where we had a large group having more than 50 homes. I'm not going to name names, and I'm just using pretty arbitrary numbers to try and protect the identity of the group. But this group couldn't fix their home. It was rated 5 inadequates and had a closure notice on it. We were given a month by the local authority to fix that problem, and we were given 28 days. Clearly, the manager who was there was deemed as not fit for purpose, and we were told, confidential recruitment process is going ahead. What we actually found out, I mean, we knew heart of hearts that there's no way a new manager can be brought in, and even an interim manager can be brought in who could, make that difference to that home and, make sure that that 28 day, I mean, there's no way a new manager can be brought in 28 days because of the DBS processes and other, the due diligence that needs to be carried out. So we worked with the existing manager. We found that there was what we call there's either a lack of skill or a lack of will. Here, there was a lack of will, so we were able to impart that skill to that. Here, there was a lack of skill, so that we were able to impart that skill to that manager, handhold her, and get her across to the other side. Yes, it took some time. Yes, embedding takes more than a month, but the local authority was happy enough to make sure that they kept the contract at the homes, and the home managed to, in the next couple of months, CQC came back to check on the closure notice because it had gone to another process altogether, and CQC was happy with the improvements, so they upgraded the rating. And 6 months down the line, I had a meeting at the head office of this company, and I was told what a fantastic manager they have, and they've managed to cascade her learnings to other homes because she was so good. So this was a classic case where there was a person who didn't have the right support, and she certainly had the will, which is what to kind of get to the other side. She had the determination to get to the other side. She just didn't know how. And so having a third party involved, despite all the resources that this fairly large group could muster, they had to seek external support and get that. But it was possible to turn it around within a month and have the closure notice repealed within 3 months and give it an all clear where occupancy was on the rise 6 months down the line. It had a stable staff team, so it is possible to turn it around quite quickly. And I think if an investor type, somebody with that mentality, goes in to buy an inadequate or requires improvement home, they can add value fairly quickly, quicker than otherwise. An existing operator could also do that, but because they would still be dogged by some of the some of the reputational issues, it takes a little longer, but it doesn't take that much longer. So for us, 6 months is typical. Despite we've heard various numbers in the industry like 2 years, 1 year, etc. But it is a lot quicker than one thinks, as long as they get the right support and fairly quickly enough. Thank you.
That's great. I've got a couple of questions that have come in actually. One is probably.
Hey, can I before we jump onto that, can I just tag on to the end of that, if that's okay?
Of course, Councillor.
So what should operators be thinking about due to the shortage of stock that's available? A lot of operators are forced to look at homes that either are non-compliant or aren't performing where they should be from a regulatory perspective. And what should operators be looking at when they are looking at those opportunities? And it comes down to the 2 Ps for me. There's been a common theme which we've discussed all the way through this so far. The first one is people. Be that the registered manager, be that the support team, be that the staff. If you are looking to buy a home that is, say, requires improvement, it's been struggling for a couple of years from a regulatory perspective, but it's full of agency staff, then that may well be telling you the answer is because there's employees or people in that business which aren't invested, they're not full-time employees, they don't really care about the business as much as a full-time employee would. If you've got a good manager and you've got the support, you've got good people around you, i.e. care consultants, a good bank manager who specialises in the healthcare industry or some other finance professional, a good accountant, again, that specialises in the sector, all of these can actually drive a positive outcome. And then the second P is planning. It's taking the time to understand what are the actual issues with this particular business, creating a plan and then delivering it and executing it. So people and planning are the 2 key things that I would really focus on if you are looking to buy a home that isn't necessarily performing as well as it should be. Okay,
well, thank you. You're welcome to jump in there. I have to say, Graham Norton would not put up with that. Let's go to some questions. First of all, this might be a quick answer, and someone said, a new care home spec design meant to be en suite. Post-COVID, it was a factor where those that didn't have en suite had issues. Is that true? What's the situation with en suite?
Yes, a new care home has to have en suite facilities.
I knew that would be a quick answer. This might be this might require a little bit more depth. Okay.
But again, can I elaborate on that point as well? Because if you are looking at older stock, you know, take the ensuite point that you quite rightly raised, Tina. If you are looking at older converted stock, are the bedrooms of sufficient size to enable you to put ensuites in?
No.
Can you future-proof that asset? No. Each opportunity will be unique, and it's finding the right one for you as a buyer to make sure that it ticks all the right boxes. But the majority of the transactions that we fund, the CQC registration transfers on purchase. So yeah, it's absolutely right. The new regulations offer new registrations of new units, but for existing sites, when they are sold, unless it's the Care Inspectorate of Wales, then the CQC often transfers that registration with the transfer of ownership.
I mean, if I can just jump in as well, Ian. I mean, we've come across the new homes which are en suite, which are pretty much compliant on that front. But we also come across older homes which are, I mean, I know of a home, a 25-bedded home in Surrey, which is like a rabbit warren and, you know, quite an old property. That's rated outstanding and has been re-rated outstanding. I mean, they provide fantastic care, and they're also able to charge about well over £2,000 a week in fees. And so that's then basically £1 million business automatically. So they are able to adapt and survive in this framework and provide great care.
Okay, lovely. But let's move on to the next question then. But despite the input, care home just doesn't turn around due to embedded for practice. Is that something that you found, or have you always managed to turn things around?
If I can jump in on that one. So we always find that that's pretty much part and parcel of a home that's rated inadequate, and it's pretty much it can be well ingrained. It can be, you know, the bad practice can be ingrained, often accompanied by poor leadership or weak leadership. But we've always found that can be managed. It can be often, again, going back to the skill and will issue. It's often a lack of skill. It's often then working alongside them, which has made it possible. So as I said, it's a very collaborative business, what we are in. I know of a good rated home which had its kitchen closed down because the chef didn't play his part, and everyone suffered in the aftermath of it. So I think it's a very collaborative thing, and I think it's definitely possible. Every time we go into a home which is rated inadequate, they've always had embedded poor practice. There is always a way to break that pattern. It's always possible to reorient everyone to work in the right direction, and everyone comes out of it fairly well. And again, as I alluded to earlier on, it's fairly quickly as well. So it can be anything from, we've done it in a month, but ideally in 3 months, we manage to embed good practice and move on. So it is possible.
Good to hear. Let's move on then. So how can an operator demonstrate to a lender that they're good? I mean, the lenders use the same metrics that you do, and do lenders use the same metrics that CQC use?
Yeah, can I answer that? Oh, can I have a go at answering that, and I'll pass on, because I know Tony will want to say a few words on this. Yes, so the basis of being a good care home is to comply with CQC. So our compliance review works the same way that CQC does. We're looking at the key lines of inquiry, and we're checking that the regulations have been met. However, we also look at the commercial side of the performance of the care home, and we can give the provider, or give the provider an idea of how they could perform better commercially. However, most of it goes hand in hand. For instance, you've talked about agency staff. Agency staff, as any provider here will know, is a drain on resources, and not just that, the quality. I'm not saying there aren't some good people out there working for agencies. However, they're not part of your team. They're not invested in your residents, and cost an awful lot of money. So focusing on recruitment is really important. But yeah, we will do the same thing as CQC does, but we'll also look alongside that at the commercial side of it if needed. Okay, sorry, Tony, I thought you might want to ask that, but I wanted to jump.
Let's go over to Tony. What's your view, Tony?
Yes, I think. Sorry again. I've just lost my train of thought. So the thing is, I think again, I'm just going to repeat on this. It is a collaborative business. It's something where people work together, and I think when you think, and it's the learning organizations that have always come out doing well in this again and again and again. And it's also, I mean, for us, we've seen getting the quality right, getting the compliance right, has always underpinned commercial success, which then helps. So for us, it's always a three-step process: fix the quality, which then fix the commercials, which then fix the financials automatically. And I think lenders have always oversimplified things into using the CQC ratings as a benchmark, and the problems with it we've already touched on, and Stuart in particular. One is it can be quite some time ago. Two is it's an assessment that at any one point in time, it's just a snapshot ultimately, and things change. So having that oversight, it doesn't have to be a third-party consultant as such. It can be someone internal to the organization who comes and has a look around, there's a fresh pair of eyes that come in and have a look around, keeps people on their toes. Knowing that somebody like that is around itself, it goes a long way. And it helps to, so it's not just the management team that then looks at things and identifies issues at the home, which they are meant to do anyway. It's not just the provider, but there is also another pair of eyes, be it an internal quality assurance person, be it a consultancy, that keeps it going. And also, I think that gives assurance to banks. So we are often asked by lenders to have a view on a home that they're looking at refinancing or financing for a new acquirer, for example, where we are asked to give a view, and we are able to give a trusted view where we are able to comment on is it compliant with the regulations? And does that have the right culture in place? For example, do they have the right values in place? And so far, we always seem to have got it right. Touch wood. But yeah, so I think these are some factors to take into account, and it's a bit slightly disheartening sometimes when we see lenders, fortunately just a minority where they would say, oh, this is requires improvement, so we won't lend. But they're getting few and far between, if I'm right, Stuart. You're a better place to comment on that.
Well, before Stuart comes in, I'd just quickly like to say there is going to be some time after Stuart's answer for some questions. If there's any questions that you, the audience, would like to ask, by all means, just drop something into the Q&A box. So, Stuart, really similar question to you then. What's the point of view of the lenders? You've got the insight on what the lenders are thinking. How do you demonstrate to lenders how good an operator is, and what are they looking for in an operator?
This is where I would really encourage lenders to broaden their approach, and I am going to echo a number of things that Tony's just said. I consider it a bit of a lazy way to assess the quality of an operator. If you're essentially looking at two KPIs, which is financial accounts and their last CQC inspection, that gives you a limited high-level view of somebody's performance. But what's really important to us, I liken it to the first-time buyers that we support as a business. If we talk to somebody, one of the reasons that our team loves working in the healthcare sector is they're passionate about care. But one of the negatives, if you like, about the healthcare sector is that there's some really good money to be made in. And it's getting that balance right between the commercial aspect and the moral aspect, if you like, of providing the care. Now, we do talk to a number of first-time buyers who are purely motivated by commercial gain. And we don't support them, purely because they're not doing it for the right reasons. to answer the question, how can you demonstrate to a lender how good you are as an operator or how good you will be as an operator? It comes back to those two P's that I mentioned earlier, people and planning. Now, Tony touched on it, quality assurance, whether that's internal or external. Every business should do this. And I know it's something that we do at Swoop on a regular basis, is actually, I'll put myself in the customer's shoes for a short while. What is my experience of this business or this care home as a customer? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Do I enjoy that? Is that a good experience? Is it a bad experience? How can we improve it? Quality assurance is key, whether that's internal planning or external support that you bring in to help you achieve that. And then it's your team. Who are they? What do they do? So we spend a lot more time nowadays than we ever have done previously around assessing the quality of the applicant and what the deal team looks like. Now, if you're buying a relatively small care home and you're a first-time buyer, then the ability to bring in that external support is sometimes limited. But having a good lawyer that specialises in healthcare, a good accountant, a bank manager or an intermediary or a broker that knows the healthcare sector inside out, care consultants, getting them on board early, engaging them, actually documenting what your plan is, how to provide outstanding care. All of these are marginal gains that help build a complete picture that shows actually I'm really passionate about what I do and the care that I deliver. That in itself will give confidence to somebody that the P&L performance will be there in the background. So it's, for me, again, it comes down to those two P's, people and planning, having the right people around you, both employees, registered managers, carers, we've touched on them all today, getting that team right, but also planning forwards, making sure that you are focused on providing the best quality care that you can, and documenting and demonstrating that will stand you in good stead from a regulatory perspective, but it also then enable lenders to buy into you and have confidence in you to perform.
Okay, that's good. I mean, while we're talking about people, Julia Ribbon has just dropped us a question, which and it sort of touches on that. She says, good back office management not only helps the smooth running of the home, but is an asset to the service manager. How do you support homes to recognise the value of such a role? That might be one for Tina.
Okay, yeah, I've been a registered manager for many years before I did this job, and having a great backroom staff is really, really important. I think, yeah, the administrator, for example, in a care home can make a huge difference to the financials, but also having the great person up there at the front, the receptionist who greets you, the first person you see, who also can protect the manager and be a gatekeeper. These people that work in the back room of a care home, and also the provider's backroom staff, very, very important, very important.
Tony, I don't know if you want to jump in on that question as well.
Yes, I mean, thank you for asking that question, Julia. And I think Julia has lots of experience seeing the back room or the back office operation fail. So it's a very pertinent question for sure. Essentially, I mean, we generally get involved as a consultant, we get involved in fixing issues, but along the way, we always take a holistic view on things because, you know, there are lots of moving parts in a care home, and the back office is very fundamental to that. So, for example, this could be having good reporting on training statistics and reviewing training statistics, make sure that, you know, you're on top of training, and that's pretty much often delegated to that back office function. It could be in terms of handling service users' monies at a care home. And again, sometimes the back office function gets relegated. So how do we support it? We try and draw everyone into that improvement process when it comes to a turnaround. And part of our mentoring or coaching for care providers is to emphasize the importance of the back office function. We in fact call that, consider that as part of the management team of the care home. So it's not just the manager, deputy manager, or unit manager. It's also the admin who comes into place. It's also, if it's a group, then there might be a head office function, and it's that as well. And often this is quite fairly, often quite linked with the care. So we would see where the back office would have a lasting power of attorney for someone, but it's not the right lasting power of attorney that the care, you know, people who are delivering care need to be in the know of, because every document has some limitations, I'd say, without going into too much detail. So, we've always taken the view, a holistic view. We find that back office is intrinsic to the management team, and that drives the success of the management team. And often we try support them as much as possible, draw them into the whole process as much, always, because they're pretty fundamental to it, and they need that support, they need that recognition as well, I would say.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, are there any qualifications that are available in terms of back office support? Because sort of to complete the circle with that in itself is an additional way of rewarding those individuals and supporting those individuals with qualifications in terms of that role within the business. It places additional value on that role as a result of that. But also from an operator's perspective, if you can encourage your employees to do qualifications and you can document that, that will stand you in really good stead when presenting a case to a lender to show, actually, I support, the reason that I've got a really loyal staff team is because we support them both with their personal development and in their roles. So is that another way that operators can support their teams?
Absolutely, Stuart. So I think we've always encouraged, as I was saying earlier on, it's a learning organization that we've seen has always done very well. So that learning has to cut across all segments of the staff team, the management and staffing team. So it's that continuous improvement. So with, say, the back office, it could be an administrator going through a secretarial or business administration type of course, or if it's finance, it's more finance-led, again, competence in that. So you could have a finance clerk who's, not very qualified and not qualified or even part qualified, which they can be encouraged as part of their personal development plan to improve their skill sets, then that goes a long way. So that learning organization thinking has to permeate across the organization in every sense, at every level, whether it's a chef in terms of trying to go from a level 2 to level 3 to level 4 in her or his line of work. It just has to permeate across the organization. So hence, that's pretty fundamental to that. So, and we've seen where, that has led to better, motivated staff or force who then, that solves half the problems. We don't see that many problems, and they are all engaged and oriented in that one direction.
Yeah, and also people like the maintenance people in the homes, we can save ourselves as care, well, save ourselves as care home providers a huge amount of money by having highly qualified people doing that role, people that want to learn, people that can do an EBOSH, or they can do pack testing, or the extra things that we could get people internally to do, rather than buying it in externally. So the more we train up our staff, the better our home will do financially.
That is a really nice point on which to move on to the next question, which is, and we've only got a few minutes on this, so it's from Ed Brown. Is the Diploma in Health and Social Care Leadership still the gold standard for the registered manager? Should homeowners also consider this qualification themselves? I'm going to ask you to answer that really quickly.
Yes, and yes.
Yes, and yes.
Really quick.
That's
yes,
good.
Yes. Yeah, to be a registered manager, you either need to have or be working towards that qualification, and I think it's something that, as a homeowner, it would be best practice to certainly have an understanding.
Okay, and there's another question which has just come in, which is, will it be compulsory for care homes to adopt a digital approach or digital systems under the new CQC regulations? Everything's going digital. Is the CQC going the same way?
Not compulsory, however, it will. My personal opinion is that I don't see how it's going to work long term without it becoming compulsory.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way the wind is blowing, isn't it? So, I think Stuart said future-proofing your business earlier, and getting digital is going to be a big one.
The big one is, the big thing that we see a lot of is that the Wi-Fi. Start with the Wi-Fi, please, before you start working on everything else, because if the Wi-Fi is not right in a care home, and you can't get everything you need everywhere in the care home, then you've got to get the infrastructure right first.
It's certainly going to be what I want in my care home when I get there. Okay, I think we're coming up to time, so I think let's call it a day there. I want to say thanks very much indeed to Tony Peru and Tina Stebbings from Fulcrum Care. Thanks very much indeed, and thanks very much indeed to Stuart Pavlicek from Swoop Funding. Thanks to you very much indeed for joining us as our audience. Thank you for your questions and thank you for your kind attention and your thoughts on everything. If there's any other topic you'd like us to address, then please do get in touch and let us know. We will endeavour to have another one of these in a few months' time, and whatever the topic, we want to cover it if you want to listen to it. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for your time and take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.